What's up guys, it's Darius, and today I have another Final Fantasy 15 video, but this is obviously for the active time report that just happened today on June 4th, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for me. I think it was 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for anybody, in that area. But right now I'm just going to be going over everything that Tabata had to say in the active time report. So yeah, let's just get started. So the first thing that he went over was that the official website for Final Fantasy 15, to be more specific, the survey that they had for 15 will be live around the time that Gamescom is happening, and it's gonna have a lot of info. So expect all of the survey information, including the info that they give us during Gamescom and trailers and all that stuff, to be on that website. So the next thing that they went over were the questions that people had in the survey, or comments that people had in the survey that they didn't go over in the last active time report, that weren't part of the 15 questions that they did last time, but they thought were important to go over. So the first one that a lot of people talked about, or one that stood out, was are we able to sell items in bulk? For example, if you have a whole bunch of saber tusks and you want to sell maybe 80 of them at the same time and just get a whole bunch, will you be able to do that? And the answer was basically, yeah, you're going to be able to do that. And they assume that it'll be in, and I think they already have it in. The next thing was, people kind of had questions about the background music for Final Fantasy 15 episode Dusky, more specifically when you're just walking around in the environment, and people were wondering, what was going on with that. And that's a common trait for open world games, where music doesn't really start unless you're in a cutscene or you start to go into battle, you enter a certain place. So they said that the environmental sounds will play an important part, as they already did in episode Dusky. They'll play an important part in the final game, but they do plan on having customizable, in some way, a customizable sound setting for people to play around with that can be there for the player's liking. And they plan on adding a whole bunch of dynamic sounds to make the environment sound and feel more realistic, even though there's not music in it. The next topic that people had that really stood out was the topic of water, and how the characters aren't really, at least in episode Dusky, not very that active in the water. You can't really do much. The only thing you can really do in the water is walk up to it, up to about maybe your knee, or maybe your hip or your waist or whatever. But you can't really dive or do a lot in the water, basically. And people were wondering, what's it gonna be like when we get the final game? And they brought up the topic of the E3 trailer in they said 2012, but it's actually in 2013. And the Leviathan, that whole scene where Noctis jumped in the water and he was swimming, and everything was going on. And they mentioned that basically there's going to be some movement in the water, but there's not going to be underwater battles, and like the one that you saw in that trailer. And basically that's just because they said that takes up a lot of resources, and compared to the other elements and features they wanted to add in the game, they really don't feel like that one thing is everyone wants that one thing in place of all the other cool features and basically functions they have going on in the game that will make the game fun. So that's not really going to be in the game. They also explained further that all the things that go into that. They said that the combat and the movement for 15 is very tied to the land, and when you're dealing with water, and not just one character, you're dealing with 4 characters. When you deal with water, you need to think about the vertical too, since you're able to move around in different places. And to have to do that with 4 characters at the same time, on top of different movement for the weapons, for each weapon that you have, is just a lot of resources that would take up, and they would rather have in other features that have proven to be well received by the fans so far, rather than, you know, have that one thing and just replace all that with that one thing. So they said, you know, maybe stuff like that will be added through DLC or a patch later on when the game comes out. But as for right now, it's not happening. The next and I think last thing that they went over in terms of topics that people went over in the survey was the topic of a stamina gauge. And basically people wanted a stamina gauge to let them know, you know, when they're running, you know, how much time they have left before they're about to run out. And I think Tabata said that they're not going to do that. They're not going to add that just because there are going to be way more other ways to transport yourself and in the game when it finally comes out, so you won't have to rely on running too much. So yeah, that was basically it for the topic questions that came up during the survey. The next thing that they did was they just went over the Gamescom information. More specifically, they wanted to reintroduce they wanted to introduce some of the staff that's making the game before Gamescom comes around, since, you know, Final Fantasy 15 is a big change from 13. So yeah, they just went over the staff. And speaking of the change from Versus to 15, I think Tabata had his own segment where the camera was just on him, and he was explaining the changes that are coming to 15 that were in Versus 13 a long time ago. And there's actually one pretty big change, but we kind of saw this coming. A lot of people made predictions. So the first thing was that the story has changed a lot from Versus 13 to 15, and they tried to keep a lot of the key elements that were essential in the story. By, you know, they actually asked the original story maker for Versus 13, you know, what he would allow them to do and what he wanted them to do. And he basically said that, you know, if you keep the key elements of my story, you guys can basically do whatever you want else to the story, just as long as, you know, you keep that same feel. So it's good that the story that we had before, for the most part, is still gonna be there. But there's just a few, you know, key elements that they've kept and some things that have changed, and they did a lot of debating on that. But Tabata brought up 4 major, you know, changes that are coming. Not so much major, but noticeable changes. The first one is that Stella is out of the game. She's out of the game completely, and the person that we saw, Luna, is actually replacing her. The next one is that the Crown City of Insomnia, if you guys remember the trailer from back in 2011, I think, where, you know, you see Noctis and Stella in that building, they're having that party, and then all of a sudden, like, a fight breaks out, and it's from the opposing kingdom or enemy Niflheim. They said that part of the game is out, and I don't know exactly why they said, but they just said, I'm guessing it just came down to the story, and it really didn't fit the story, so they decided to take it out. They said that they're replacing it with another scene, basically where Noctis and, you know, Gladiolus, Pronto, and Ignis leave the city, and the enemy comes and attacks, instead of them being at a party and they just attack out of nowhere. So yeah, that attack scene is being replaced by something else that's pretty different. And the last thing that he just wanted to remind us about wasn't really a change. It was actually just that, you know, the mystery characters that we've seen, but only images of, and I haven't really seen that much of, you know, the hooded figure and the guy with the purple hair, the old guy, the girl with the dark hair and the bangs. He just wanted to confirm that those characters are still in the game, and that we will be getting information about them on in Gamescom when they decide to, you know, fully launch the the campaign for the game. The next thing that they showed was actually a tech demo number 2. If you guys remember the first tech demo, they kind of showed how they make the land and all that stuff. But this tech demo was actually sent to recruitments for the dev team that they wanted to make part of the team and make the team, you know, bigger and have the game come along much smoother. So yeah, like I said, they made this tech demo just to talk about the development challenges, you know, how graphically intensive and how, like, you know, the effects and the physics of the game are very intensive. And they sent this to people who were, you know, they were trying to have join the team and help make this game. And also, you know, just to show us, you know, what's really going on in the behind the scenes. But the next thing that they wanted to talk about was finally episode Dusky 2.0, and they had some stuff to show and they had some stuff to talk about. Now, at the time of the recording, they said that the demo was going to be released tomorrow, June 5th, but they said that they encountered if they encountered anything, any bugs that they needed to, extra time to figure out, that the game would come out at a later date. And they had a timestamp saying that it'll actually be coming out June 9th. So 5 days from now, it's not really that long. It'll be out. And what they also had to say about episode Disc Guy 2.0, besides the release date of June 9th, was that all the changes that they mentioned in the previous active time report, that they're actually going to be adding all of the things that they mentioned they might add before. So that really means that they're going to be adding the ability to do quests by yourself and split the team up. Some other things that they showed in the video were actually, they showed that there's going to be cutscenes, there's going to be new cutscenes. More specifically, there's cutscenes for when you actually camp, due to the fact that you'll be able to split your team up. And they showed new warp options. You're able to warp to rocks and not just, you're able to basically warp to more points now. They showed that there's new attacks, there's new missions, like I said before, with only one other ally, and you're actually able to fight those bigger enemies. And it was a little weird because they showed that in the video, but then afterwards they said something, we'll just have to wait and see, if we're actually able to fight that. But I don't know. In the video, it looked like we were able to fight it. So that was basically it. I think after that, they actually talked about E3. Now, this is probably one of the more disappointing things, but they said that there's actually going to be no trailer for E3. And the reason for this was because the footage that they were going to use for E3 for a trailer was actually older game footage and cutscenes that were leading up to what they're actually going to show at Gamescom. And they contacted the people at E3 who wanted to see what they had, and they said that the officials for E3, or the people that worked there for them, really didn't want any footage unless it was completely new. So they basically were like, we don't want that at all. So that kind of sucks that they really wouldn't allow them to show anything. So basically when they told them that, they were just like, we kind of gave up, and we kind of put all of our efforts into making the Gamescom presentation better than it could have been before. So, and I guess in ways it's good that they don't have to prepare something for E3, but it would have been good to see something at E3 for Final Fantasy 15. But that's just how it goes sometimes. It kind of sucks. But Gamescom is going to be good. Speaking of Gamescom, they had one hint as to what you can expect from Gamescom, besides seeing more information on the story and characters, and some of the characters we haven't seen before. And the hint that he gave us was that he showed this picture, and it was basically concept art, and it looked like an older man holding a little boy. And what I got from it was, it looked like King Regis was holding Noctis when he was a little boy. If you guys remember from the 2013 E3 trailer, they did show a segment where Noctis was smaller and he was eating, I think it might have been breakfast or dinner, I don't know what it was, with King Regis at the same table. So from that artwork that he showed, it looked like it was him holding him next to a car or whatever. So I'm guessing they're saying that that's a hint toward what you can expect, and I'm guessing that that's just saying that the trailer that they're gonna show is a backstory of King Regis and Noctis, how Noctis was able to get his powers and everything, and how King Regis came up to where he was. The next thing that they talked about wasn't really related to Final Fantasy 15. It was just going over how Type 0 is coming to PC, and they also showed the tech demo for I think the last thing that they showed was like Chapter 0 Witch Cry or something like that. It was basically a tech demo that they showed alongside Microsoft, just to kind of show off how DirectX 12 looks and everything. They did say a DirectX 12 could see, you know, some implements in the 15, but, you know, they said more so it was research for, you know, future titles and everything. And the last thing that they went over was that the next active time report will be from Germany in Gamescom, so we can expect that Gamescom, that active time report, excuse me, to be focused on Final Fantasy 15 again. So yeah, that's it, guys. Basically, that's all the analysis and sum up of everything going on. Overall, it was a pretty good active time report. I think it was better than last time, obviously. We finally got a date for episode Discard 2.0. We saw that all the changes that they wanted to make are going to be in. So the episode Discard 2.0 will be in June 9th, and there was some pretty good information even regarding the story in this active time report for 15. So let me know what you guys think of everything that I went over. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. I know it was a longer video. If you even watched my live reaction to it, thank you for watching that, because that was a pretty long live reaction to everything that happened. But I just wanted to do that for you guys who are interested. So again, if you enjoyed the video, please comment everything you have to say about everything that happened in this roundup. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, share it, favorite it, share my channel with anybody who is not aware of the content that I make, and share this video with anybody who's not aware of what happened today. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.